Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. One of the realities of family creation is acknowledging that sometimes marriages and relationships break down even when children are involved. How do we navigate that? How do we honor ourselves and our ex-partner while putting the needs of our children above everything else? How do we co-parent respectfully? Today, I get to introduce you to Hendry, who is a relationship coach who has lived experience on this topic. She and her ex-wife co-parent their 13-year-old daughter. Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the opportunity and pleasure to be chatting with Hendry and introducing you to and their story of family creation. So welcome, Please tell us about who you are and about the members of your family.
Sure. Thank you so much. I love that this podcast exists in the world nowadays. So my name is Hendry. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a certified and credentialed relationship coach. I work in the holistic space, and I also did a TED Talk a few years ago, Survivor's Guide to Jealousy. And I write for Diva magazine, which is an LGBTQ women's and non-binary folk magazine based in the UK but available internationally, and I've been working with them for 3 years doing their relationship column.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I feel like I subscribe to that. It's an e-zine, isn't it?
It's online, and also you can still purchase the paper copy. And
Wow.
I have queer joy every time I go into my local library, where I tend to do a lot of my writing, because they have it. They have the actual copy, and obviously I get sent a copy as well. But they have it in my local library, and I'm like, yes, yes.
Little steps, right? Little
Yeah.
steps.
Oh, I forgot to say who's in my family.
Oh, and that's
Sorry.
that's all right. Who's in your family?
So there are 3 parents and 1 daughter. So myself as the non-bio parent, my ex-wife as the bio parent, and my ex-wife's girlfriend as the step parent, and then our daughter.
There you are. We have a similar dynamic. My stepdaughter has 3 moms, and I think sometimes that works well for her, and sometimes she's like, seriously, that's too many moms to have, all with an opinion. So I
Can we get
understand.
some different chromosomes in the room?
Right. That's right. Um, so of all of the different ways that there are for members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community to create their families, can you tell me how the two of you went about making the decision to create your daughter?
Yeah, we knew when, as soon as we got together, it was one of the very early conversations that we had, that we both wanted a family. And my girlfriend, who became my wife, she'd always wanted to carry a child,
Mhm.
and I'd always wanted to be a mum, but hadn't had that urge to carry a child. Now, I had
Right.
been married previously to a man for a while, and we'd been exploring having children, and obviously it was my job to do that, so I was prepared to do it. And
Right.
actually, when my ex-wife and I got together, it was such an easy conversation to have, which was fantastic, because
Mhm.
it was clear who was going to carry and who wasn't going to carry.
Mhm.
And so we took the path of IUI. So she had some tests done, and they said there's nothing to suggest that there'll be any issues with having to go straight to IVF. So we went with the IUI route.
Okay. And I mean, that's a gift right there. So you started off by going to a fertility clinic and having them do sort of the full gamut of testing to see the physical health of your ex-wife so that they would be
Yes.
able to make a determination about what the best path forward would be.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
We went to an open evening. There was quite a sort of aggressively marketed organization based in London, and we were living in London in the UK at that point, and they were advertising in all of the press, queer press, LGBTQ plus press, and so we went to one of their open evenings and kind of got hooked in and started the process with them. Very quickly, it didn't suit us and it didn't suit a lot of other people. And we had a random conversation with an old friend in a pub one day who had gone through the process of having children and had said, you know, you can go through the NHS as a private patient. You don't have to go to a private clinic. You can go through an NHS hospital as a
oh.
private patient. We were like, what? Didn't know you could do that. So we then chose a hospital in London and went through them, and it was such a brilliant experience compared to the private clinic that we'd started off at.
And can I ask you about the private clinic? Because this is something that comes up often. And, certainly we hear people talk about rainbow washing in June because companies come out and they want to make sure that they're capitalizing on supporting or appearing at the very least to support members of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. But I guess my question really is that sort of what you have seen? And was that perhaps your experience that they wanted to support the queer community, but they weren't necessarily set up to do that insofar as having staff that understood some of the intricacies of the relationships, that it wasn't a group of people who automatically knew that they were going to have fertility challenges. Like a cisgendered heterosexual couple walking into a fertility clinic that's been trying for a year clearly has the need for some assistance because something's not working properly. But a queer couple walking in, especially a couple with two uteruses, doesn't assume right off the hop that they won't be successful easily.
Yeah. They were amenable, they were um accessible into, I mean, there were a lot of lesbians in space when we went to our open evening. This was 2007, so it was
Mm.
quite some time ago, just to put it
Mhm.
in space and time. And so they knew what they were dealing with, if you like. The
Mhm.
way that it didn't work for us is we were kind of um, forced into using, that's a very strong word, but we were sort of press ganged into using their sperm bank, which was very small.
Right.
And so wasn't much of a choice. And we knew about the European Sperm Bank. We'd already heard about that, but we were kind of encouraged to use their stock, if you like. And so
Mm.
that was one of the reasons where we kind of started to think, I'm not sure how they are putting us first rather than having their own agenda. And then there, as we said, there was no reason for us to go to IUI
Mhm.
because of my the medical side of things. But very quickly they said, oh well, it hasn't worked these last couple of times. Maybe we should have a conversation about moving on to IVF. So you're going from IUI, which in those days was something like, I don't know, 400, £500 a hit, up to £5,000. So it was a significant financial difference.
Sure.
And we just said no. And then, of course, we had this conversation and thought, actually, we need to explore other avenues.
Can you, I mean, certainly I'm based in Canada, as you know, but I do have a number of guests who've been on the show from the UK. I know I have listeners in the UK, and I'll pat myself on the back for feeling like I'm international like that.
You are.
But can you explain a little bit more about the NHS? And because I understand on a base level that your NHS is similar to Canada's healthcare system in that it's government funded, and so people aren't necessarily paying out of pocket for regular doctor's appointments or most tests and things like that. So now you have another level to your NHS that I'm wondering if maybe many listeners in the UK don't even know about, that is an option for them.
Yeah, we had to pay for all of our appointments.
Mhm.
Um, and this is where, I mean, there are currently people who are fighting very hard and very well to change the system because we had bought our own sperm. So we arrived 2 uteruses with our sperm at an NHS hospital, and we were there as private patients. Now, if we were a heterosexual couple and the penis haver was bringing the sperm, then you would get a cycle of IVF for free, whereas 2 women don't. And that's still current. So we're trying to fight that because obviously it's deeply discriminatory.
Right.
So yes, the NHS is, as you say, the National Health Service is, we all pay it as part of our taxes. It comes out of our money and it's government. And so I can go to the doctors. We don't have to pay anything for going to see our GP, going to hospital. I mean, my uncle, rest in peace, he was in hospital before he died with his stroke. He was there for 3 months. Nobody paid anything to do with anything, and that was, I mean, it must have been a couple of thousand a day in terms of the care that he was getting. So all of that is free in inverted commas.
Right.
But
right,
yes, when it comes to getting into the baby making side of things, you can't do it for free if you are 2 cis women.
Which is curious, isn't it? Because isn't being queer inherently a fertility challenge? So if part of it is that you're seeking this out as a cisgendered heterosexual couple because you need support, because something's not working and you've been trying, so therefore you have some classification of fertility issues, doesn't not having the reproductive organs necessary with your partner to make a baby just inherently, by virtue of what it is, creating a fertility issue?
Yeah. And we were bringing our own sperm. We were doing the same thing. Right. We brought it with us. We had it shipped over.
There you are.
So yeah, it's not great.
No, and it's sad that as far as we have come, and in the world we have come a distance, there's still a distance to travel for sure.
Yes.
And it's something that outside of the community doesn't really get thought of by many people. When you talk about it, when you tell people about it, they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
I think that's true of anybody who goes through IUI or IVF or any kind of baby making experience, whether you are queer or non-queer. I think the emotional impact and load of going through that for anyone, any human of any gender and any sexual orientation, is underestimated, I think, in society.
Oh, I would agree. I fully agree. So you started all of this, the investigation and attending things, in 2007, you said?
Yes. Yeah.
And your daughter was born in 2011, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It took us 4 years and 14 IUI attempts. So in vitro IUI is where you have the sperm put inside of you in the clinic. So it's the turkey baster in a clinic, as opposed to IVF, where you would have the fertilization happening outside of the body. So those people who aren't familiar with what the differences are. So, the expense comes obviously in terms of you have the eggs harvested and then put back inside. Whereas with us, we had a tube of sperm put inside and for the fertilization sounds so weird, doesn't it?
Growing a
we
garden.
Went down the farm and we did some fertilizing.
That's right.
That's what we did in a London hospital.
That's right. Just in London. That's so you decided to use the European Sperm Bank.
Yeah.
Is that right? What made you think we want to do something like that as opposed to using a known donor, or was it that you didn't know a known donor? Like, were there restrictions there?
We had one person that we wanted as a known donor, and we talked to them and they had a very long think about it and they decided that they wouldn't go forwards. They are a big part of my daughter's life now, which is beautiful and lovely. So it didn't sort of break any kind of relationship down, which is the best thing, really. You know, it's beautiful. They were honest about their boundaries, and so we were like, yeah, okay, great. So now we move on to what we want to do next. And at that time there were a few sperm banks, and we'd heard good things about the European Sperm Bank. And it was also, at that time, it was one of the sperm banks that you could have an open donor. So what that meant is, if our daughter decided to find the donor when she was older, she would be able to do that. Whereas there were some sperm banks that had closed donors only, which meant that it was anonymous and you weren't given any information. So we wanted to have that possibility if that's what our daughter wanted to do. And also there were a lot, it was a bit like a dating, we always say it's a bit like a dating agency. So my ex-wife had decided that we would go through some of my qualities to bring into our daughter. So things like hair color, eye color, handedness. So I'm left-handed, a bit rare, and interests. So we'd sort of ticked off the list of things that were similar to do with me. And that, I mean, I was sort of fine either way, but we had to break it down somehow. So that seemed like a good idea to go down that path.
Fair. And at the age your daughter is now, so she's 2011, so she'd be 13 then, is she? Or thereabouts? Yeah.
She
is. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
I know.
It goes by terribly fast. Has she expressed any interest in knowing or learning more as she gets older?
Yes. Yeah. So she knows her donor. You got a sort of dossier, if you like. You heard his voice. He talked about why he wanted to donate. You have all the full medical history. He writes a letter to the product. So there's a photo of him as a young child. And so we got a lot of information and put together a book for her so that she's got the sort of the journey of it kind of thing. And she can contact him when she's 18. We know who he is because of the internet. So we know who he is. There is a brilliant organization called the Donor Sibling Registry. And the Donor Sibling Registry will help siblings find each other. So we were given a number for the sperm number, and so you can find, and she's actually met one of her siblings, and they get on brilliantly. It's been beautiful. It's been amazing.
That's amazing.
Which we didn't discuss. I mean, those of you who are listening, and you are right at the beginning, there's a few you sort of think you over discuss, right? You talk about everything because you have time. We had 4 years, and we'd been together since 2004. So we'd also had the time up till 2007 to discuss parents and values and beliefs and views and those sorts of things. And we thought we talked about everything, but we didn't talk about what it would feel like meeting half siblings. We didn't talk about parenting a teenager. And this is interesting because I think for a lot of us, when we go into this, you want a baby, you forget that you're actually getting a child and a young adult and an adult as well. And so I would say, make sure you have conversations about, yes, your family values and what you think about different stages of parenting, and carry on into teenage and beyond, and have those conversations.
Yeah. Well, that's part of why, outside of the podcast, one of the things that I do is parenting coaching, and I remind people, yes, I will help you out when they're newborns. I'll help you out when they're toddlers, but let's keep that conversation going right through until they move out of the house, because there are going to be times that different things can, come up and conflict and need to be accommodated and all kinds of things. So you're absolutely right. It's when we're thinking about having a baby, I think because the idea of having a baby can be just so all-encompassing and so consuming that our brains don't go, oh yeah, and at some point they're going to be 13, right?
Yep.
Is it a self-preservation thing, perhaps, on some levels?
Yeah, maybe so. It does happen.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about babyREADY because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. So it took you 4 years. That's not, I mean, you were saying IVF is significantly more expensive, but 4 years and 14 attempts with IUI is not going to be inexpensive. Do you mind sharing how much you spent trying to create your family?
Yeah, I mean, not to go into exact figures, but it was significantly more than an annual income back in 2007. So it was, yeah, it was a lot. But it was sort of spread out, obviously.
Sure, it's spread out, but you still have to navigate how
Yeah.
you come up with resources like that so that you can live that dream that's and so many people just automatically get to have by virtue of who they choose to parent with.
Yeah, and it's really, we were doing there was a lot of research coming out at that time, or perhaps we were just tuning into the research around stress and pregnancy. And because it was an ongoing, cycle, literal cycle, we were in that kind of difficult situation of thinking, well, with both of us working, actually it would be better if perhaps she wasn't working and there wasn't that stress, because she was in a very stressful job at that point. So it was very difficult to sort of think about the finances, and we need to keep going on this. And also, are we shooting ourselves in the foot? Because you're very stressed with work, and that could be impacting, we don't know, but that could be impacting on the pregnancy. So financially, it's incredibly stressful.
It absolutely is. And then you shift that stress though, right? Because if she's not working, then there is only one income coming in. And so she may not be feeling the stress of being gainfully employed at the moment, but that does shift the weight and responsibility to your shoulders to have to be able to make the money to keep the family afloat and support the two of you through the time. So it's not an easy time. And I often say to people, make sure you're talking all the way through it, because what you're feeling is perhaps what your partner's feeling, but from their own perspective. And if you're not talking, then you're shutting doors before you even get a chance to get near to open them.
Yes, yeah. And we knew once our child was born that my ex-wife would be at home for as long as we could sustain it financially. So we'd made that decision. So it was kind of just bringing it a little bit earlier, because she did finish work. I think it was about a year before our daughter was born. I think it was around about that time. And we'd said that I was going to be the main earner for a few years, certainly until our daughter started school, which again was quite interesting, because I earn less, and I also have I was earning less than my wife of the time. So it was sort of like, oh, but you're the one who, absolutely, it's right that you're having the child, but financially it would have been better if I was doing I mean, I wouldn't have done that job anyway, because I loved my job. But
Right.
you know what I mean? It's just, it was quite tricky.
Yeah. But all of that takes its toll on a relationship. And
Yes.
I mean, you have been very clear that she's your ex-wife, and that's going to be for a reason. How do you navigate that emotional? Because there's a point where there's a transition. This is not a family dynamic of the three of you together anymore. This is changing into a co-parenting kind of dynamic. And how do you do that in a way that's respectful for you, respectful for your ex-wife, but most importantly, respectful for your daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. You do need a lot of support when you have a child, and it is important to make sure that you've got that around you. We did, and we had a lot of good friends. We also knew that we didn't want to have one child. We knew that we wanted to create a family, and having our second child, moving into that space, is where things started to fall apart for us, because it didn't work in the way that we wanted it to work. You know, we have one child, so that the losses and the continued stress. At one point, I had to go at getting
Oh,
pregnant. We were that desperate.
right.
That didn't work. I mean, I had one cycle of IUI. So that's the point where things started to change for us. The increased pressure, the increased stress, having a baby already, and also desperately wanting to extend our family in the way that we had always dreamt of it. And we had a lot of heartbreaks, so, which I won't go into now. And we didn't get enough support around that. We didn't seek enough support. We were offered some support, some bereavement counselling, etc., and we didn't go down that path. And you know, it's at our loss, really. We should have taken up those offers. So that's where things started to separate for us.
Mhm. How how do you co-parent though with someone that you, because it's, most people don't, right? Not I shouldn't say most people don't. Many people co-parent. Do they do it well? Do they do it respectfully? Do they maintain some kind of a positive dynamic for the kids? Lots of times the answers to that question are no. Um, so so how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, in the UK, 42% of first marriages end in divorce. So
Wow.
it's there as a statistic, and 31% of second marriages end in divorce. So that it's there as a statistic. I've done a lot of research on this. I write for medium.com as well, and I've written an article about successful co-parenting, because where we're at now, we are in the best place we've ever been, which is phenomenal, which is fantastic. And obviously it's been a fair, well, not obviously, our daughter was 3 when we finally separated, and she's 13 now. So we're talking 10 years ago, you
Mhm.
know. So
Mhm.
the world looks very different.
Sure.
However, it's been a journey. There's been
Mhm.
stormy waters, and we've managed to navigate it. And I think for us, what has worked is that even though sometimes we don't agree with each other's decisions,
Mhm.
we respect those decisions. And the reason we respect those decisions is because we spent so much time making sure that our relationship values, our family values, our parenting values were aligned. And that's what's carried us through all of this. There is annoyance sometimes,
Mhm.
and,
Sure.
you know, those sorts of things, but they are smoothed out with that sense of, I do trust their decision. It wouldn't be what I would do, and we both say it about each other. It's not one way at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that has carried us through. The other thing that's carried us through is co-parenting therapy. People, if you can afford it, co-parenting therapy.
Mhm.
It shouldn't just be for couples staying together. It should be for any dynamic that needs additional held, safe support.
Mhm. And a lot of insurance plans through employers will cover therapy like that too, not just couples
Okay.
therapy, but as long as it's a licensed practitioner and you can provide a receipt, then so it isn't. I don't, it's almost as though there isn't really an excuse if you have that option to be able to exercise it so that it's easier on you. It isn't just about being easier on the child, although that is of paramount importance, but it's also easier on you when you don't have a tumultuous and antagonistic relationship with your ex-partner with whom you are parenting a child. It just
Yeah,
behooves everybody
it
to
does.
get along.
It does. We were talking earlier about, before we came on, about university, and I went to university 30 years ago, people. I know I don't sound it. And I studied a psychology degree. And my parents divorced when I was 16. Now they are friends. My mum lives in Portugal. My dad lives in the UK. She visits 2 or 3 times a year, and she stays with him, and they speak to each other once or twice a week. So they manage to work it out. They manage to prioritize the kids over their own beefs, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I at university did a one of my part of my degree was to put together do a study, and so I did a study on the effects of divorce on children, and this still stands today. The thing that is going to mess them up, children of divorced parents, the thing that's going to mess them up the most is when their parents don't get on. That is still the case. And so they didn't know that they weren't doing it because the research, they didn't know about the research. They were just doing it intuitively. So I had a fantastic role model in them, and also the research was there. And I wanted to keep my eye, I call it keep your eyes on the prize, which I know sounds weird because a child is not a prize, but keeping your eyes on the prize is the phrase that works for me in terms of this isn't about me, this is about our child. And yes, we did make mistakes at the beginning, absolutely. And yes, we did have handovers where our daughter didn't feel safe. And I can speak for me, I was prioritizing my pain and my discomfort and my anger over my daughter's comfort. And so now I know better, so I do better. Now I know that, and I mean, handovers are absolutely fine. They have been for a very long time, but I look back and I can give you advice, and I can say, what can you put in place during those handovers that support you? Because you are going to be feeling sad, upset, whether your child is going to the other parent or coming back to you. There's drama, there's emotional drama there for you. So making sure that you have some support around that.
That's so that is so true. And it is something that I think many parents believe, and I think they do truly believe, that they are hiding everything from their child.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just not the
It's not
case.
true. No, it's not true. Our daughter is incredibly perceptive, and she picks up on the slightest change in mood or feelings. She does it really well when, yeah, in any environment. She's very, very good at that, and she will tell us. Yeah, they know. They may not tell you as well. You know, some children won't tell you. They will just sense it, or it'll come out in their behavior,
Yeah.
which might not be behavior that you welcome, but is their releasing behavior that they're doing because of the stress that they're feeling.
And I think that that's an important piece of parenting is when our children are behaving any kind of a way, investigating in ourselves why we believe that they are behaving in that manner.
Yeah. 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 Be curious.
And 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 be comfortable asking questions. Like you say, be curious, ask the question, sit down, but create an environment where it doesn't feel like an interrogation, right? So that you're asking questions when they're comfortable and they're relaxed. You're just throwing in the odd question as opposed to peppering them with questions nonstop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, this happens in the work setting when you're thinking, oh, I really need to give some feedback to that person. I wish that they would talk about X. And then they just weave in a conversation about X, and you're like, oh, brilliant. I can now stick on the thing I wanted to say on top of that. So quite often it's like that law of attraction. Quite often we want to create an energy that says, I would like to actually find out how she's getting on with the person that she's just fallen out with at school. So I'm thinking about it, and then she kind of says, oh, it was quite a tough day. Oh, okay. And then you've got a way in. You can say, oh, you know, what's going on with you in person.
And you have some exciting times ahead of you as she's just reaching her teen years, and she's really starting probably to come into herself and who she is and who she foresees herself being.
Yes. Yeah, she's very, very clear on what she wants to do and where she's going, which is amazing, phenomenal. She's an amazing child.
It's fun. I mean, I love all stages. My children are grown and gone, but I love all stages of watching their brains grow and develop and find their paths. It's very cool. It's very
It's
cool.
very cool. And she's studying, one of the areas that she wanted to study was sociology. And they were doing the nature nurture debate the other day, which is fascinating because as the non-bio parent, we can have those conversations. And we've had these sorts of conversations before. And in fact, I don't know if this has happened to anybody else, but in the first few years, I forgot that my daughter wasn't biologically mine. And so sometimes we'd be at doctor's appointments and I go, well, there's none of that in my family. And my wife would be going, no, oh, hang on, wait a minute. And I'd be like, oh yeah, no,
It
it's
doesn't
not
really
relevant,
matter.
is it? It's not relevant.
Yes,
And so
right.
then that's all stopped after a while. But the habits, the ideas, the values, as we said, we've got shared values. So that comes out in our daughter as well. There are some things she does that are definitely me things. I mean, good me things. Like she's
Right.
very organized.
There you are.
And yeah, there's a few things in there. So
Yep.
so it's really great to be able to have those conversations and to see her brain
Mhm.
processing some of these things because certainly, I mean, I hate the phrase non-bio. It sounds like a washing machine,
Right.
but
Right.
I don't think we've invented another word yet.
Not
Or
yet.
answers on a postcard, people. And
There
I
you
did
are.
struggle with the who am I and what's my role and
Hmm.
why. And, even though legally I'm on the birth certificate, so our birth certificate says mother and parent.
Hmm.
So it doesn't say mother and father, it says mother and parent. So, all the legal stuff is there. But there is a little bit of what about me? Obviously, you're not the one who is growing a child. So
Hmm.
that was quite a journey. That was quite the journey.
Oh, I have no doubt. And one of the things that I will let listeners know is that in Canada, with both parents being on the birth certificate, that's all we need. We don't need to do a second parent adoption and things like that. And my understanding is it's the same in the UK.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a whole added cost and stress in the US. And for many of my US listeners and guests who've been on the show who've had to spend thousands on legal bills so that they
Yeah.
can adopt the child. And in cases of RIVF, the child that is actually biologically related to them, even though they didn't carry the child, they still have to adopt them. It's just, there can
Right.
be so many messes and so many spaces. And so when we do our
Yeah.
parts to learn and grow with our children, then we're just giving them the best possible start.
Well, we had got civil partnership before our daughter was born. And so that, I don't know if it's still the case, but that meant that I automatically went onto the birth certificate, as opposed to if we weren't civil partnershiped, there wasn't marriage in, marriage hadn't come in, so it was a civil partnership or nothing. And now, of
Right.
course, we have a choice of civil partnership or marriage, and so that meant that I went on the birth certificate, and we've all got the same surname. So, which has helped us because I have heard stories where even though you're on the birth certificate, if you've got a different surname, when you travel and having your passport with
Mm.
different names, people have found that they have had problems with that. So we did that because we wanted to have the same surname. Obviously, it's your complete choice. You don't have to have the same surnames, but just think about how that might impact things like
Mhm.
travel and medical things, etc., where
For sure.
you've got to get through another wall.
Yeah.
It's not just the wall of being two queer parents. It's also the legal side as well, and somebody being obstreperous around your bits of
Yeah.
paper.
And sometimes it's just what kind of a side of the bed they woke up on in the
Yeah.
morning. It's not anything personal, although it feels intensely personal at the time, right?
Well, I think we're wired for that. I think when you're a marginalized group, you look for risk, you look for danger,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we and sometimes it's there and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes, yes, absolutely, hands up, we do create it, and sometimes it is actually there and it serves us to be able to scan for that risk.
Hmm. I'm going to let you get back to your evening with a big thanks for being here with me today. But before I let you go, I would really love it if you would please tell me what is your favorite part of parenting your daughter?
Oh, lovely question. There's this word, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called compersion.
No.
And compersion, it's a word that features, was invented in non-monogamous circles as a way of describing that feeling of seeing your partner with another partner and you feel joy. You feel the joy of them being happy with someone else because you feel secure and everyone, you know, and it's ethical. This word compersion can be used in other ways as well. And when I think about the word compersion in terms of parenting, what it means to me is when your joy is someone else's joy. So when my daughter learnt to tie her shoelaces and I was witnessing that, any kind of firsts that she does, or a realization, or she's learned a new word, or she's read this book, or she's heard this amazing theory that she didn't know about, her joy is my joy. And that's compersion. And I absolutely love it.
That's pretty amazing. And I love that I got to learn a new word, but that it is a brilliant way to describe just watching them through this really fascinating lens.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I hope you have a fabulous evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.